So, let's stop pretending for a moment because everyone saw it, but almost nobody dared to say it out loud. That tiny microphone told the whole story, and yet the world moved on as if nothing had happened. Forget palace insiders, forget press releases, forget the perfectly staged photos meant to convince us of harmony. Because this one little mic, this one frozen, glinting piece of metal, spoke louder than 1,000 royal statements combined. Picture it. Prince Harry standing there, posture stiff, mic in hand, lights flashing, cameras rolling, a crowd buzzing with anticipation. Every eye was on him, every lens capturing his every move, and then, as if from nowhere, Meghan stepped up. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't scheduled for this moment. She wasn't even invited to it. Yet there she was, gliding forward with that characteristic Hollywood confidence, as though the spotlight belonged to her by default. But here's the crucial detail. Harry didn't hand her the mic. He held it fast, as if it were glued to his palm, a silent barrier between him and her intrusion. No ladies first, no polite gesture of shared attention, nothing. Just a frozen silence that landed harder than any verbal rebuke could. Meghan reached, she lingered, she smiled. That all too familiar, polished, everything's fine smile that is supposed to mask discomfort. But the cracks were evident. Her outfit betrayed her. Wrinkled, slightly askew, almost as though it had been hastily pulled from a suitcase and shoved on without thought. It didn't scream Duchess, it screamed desperation. The audience, the cameras, the people on stage all paused. They sensed it. The energy shifted. Harry didn't turn. He didn't acknowledge her presence. The mic remained in his grip as if a physical extension of his boundaries. And in that silent, awkward space, something significant occurred. That wasn't just a husband ignoring his wife. That was a man reclaiming his territory, asserting control, refusing to participate in the performance she was determined to stage. And Meghan, she was left standing there, awkward and unmoored. The uninvited extra in a scene she had clearly rehearsed in her mind, desperate to star in a story that wasn't hers to tell. The moment she placed a hand on Harry's shoulder, it was all written across his face. It wasn't joy, it wasn't pride, it was dread. A subtle but unmistakable flinch that revealed his inner frustration. The invisible line she had crossed once again. The crowd, the camera operators, even Harry himself seemed suspended in that beat of time where decorum battled reality. And reality was winning. She attempted to compose herself, plastering on that practiced, broad smile, acting as if her presence was entirely appropriate. Yet the silence was deafening. No applause followed her attempted intrusion. No acknowledgement legitimized her place. The spotlight refused her, and slowly, awkwardly, she withdrew, like a guest at a gathering who has overstayed their welcome, finally recognized as a disruption rather than a delight. But ask yourself, why didn't anyone report this? Why did the cameras capture, and yet the headlines remain muted? The answer is obvious. It doesn't fit the fairy tale the media has insisted upon, the polished narrative of a power couple united in all things. They would rather maintain the illusion that glosses over tension, friction, and the unspoken battles waged quietly in public spaces. And when Meghan finally stormed off, leaving behind only the echo of her failed attempt to dominate the moment, that mask cracked entirely. On camera, she maintained a semblance of composure, her smile present. But behind the scenes, sources say that facade melted instantly. No more Hollywood charm. No more Duchess-like poise. Just frustration, annoyance, perhaps even fury. Not the kind of fury that throws chairs or shouts in public. Meghan is far too calculated for that. But the quieter, sharper fury, the one that reveals itself in the prolonged stare, the stiff posture, the smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. Imagine Harry in the car later that evening attempting to return to normalcy. Do you really believe that awkwardness ended once the cameras stopped rolling? Absolutely not. That silence, that pause on stage, followed them into every conversation, every unspoken exchange, every moment of private reflection. This wasn't just a single awkward incident. This was a live-action depiction of a marriage in real time, an interplay of personalities where one partner sought to dominate and the other sought to survive. balancing on a line drawn between patience and resistance. Meghan's constant push for relevance collided with Harry's quiet assertion of personal boundaries, and the result was palpable to anyone paying attention. Even when the world was focused elsewhere, the subtleties of these interactions were screaming. Harry's glances, his posture, the weight of the microphone in his hand. It was all loaded with meaning, a physical manifestation of the internal struggle that unfolded silently for the public to interpret. And Meghan, she persisted, as if persistence alone could compensate for the absence of acknowledgement, for the lack of genuine connection. She forced herself into these spaces, confident that charm and charisma could fill gaps that weren't hers to bridge, yet the results were telling. The awkwardness of each intrusion spoke louder than any perfectly timed smile. Recall that infamous night with Kevin Costner. A perfectly orchestrated event, every element rehearsed and expected. Yet Meghan, uninvited, stepped forward as though she were reclaiming lost ground. Security did nothing, organizers said nothing, but the energy shifted instantaneously. The audience paused, the host faltered, the cameras seemed momentarily confused. Meghan threw her signature smile at the void, a silent plea for recognition that never came. The room felt suspended, unresponsive, like a glitch in reality where expectation collided violently with reality. And when she finally left, it wasn't an exit, it was a statement. A stop of silent indignation, a declaration of being overlooked, dismissed, denied. Backstage, the smile that had concealed so much melted as witnesses reported, revealing irritation, frustration, and the quiet intensity of someone who believed they had been slighted in a performance that they felt entitled to dominate. Harry, meanwhile, seemed to carry the burden of these public misalignments with a subtle, almost imperceptible weariness. It wasn't just a single incident that caused tension. It was the accumulation of micro-conflicts, each unspoken, each visually manifest, each playing out in the unforgiving arena of public attention. Every time Meghan forced herself into a spotlight moment, Harry had to navigate the complexities of appearances, diplomacy, and personal boundaries simultaneously, a balancing act that grew increasingly taxing with each misstep. His calm exterior, the steady grasp of the microphone, the unwavering continuation of his speech, all signals of silent resilience, the embodiment of someone refusing to be drawn into a performance he hadn't agreed to. And the audience, the cameras, the world, they caught it all, even if they didn't fully register it at first glance. Those awkward pauses, the hesitant gestures, the faint flicker of exasperation across Harry's features were all loaded with meaning. This wasn't just a royal couple on display, it was a marriage being dissected in real time. The private friction made public, subtle but undeniable, speaking volumes without uttering a single word. Meghan's repeated attempts to insert herself, to control the optics, contrasted starkly with Harry's quiet insistence on autonomy, creating a tension that was almost cinematic in its intensity. The drama was in the space between words, in the pauses that cameras captured but reporters ignored, in the small telling gestures that betrayed the polished veneer of public appearances. And yet Meghan persisted. With each intrusion, with each forced smile, with each attempt to dominate a moment, the subtle cracks in their relationship became more evident. It wasn't just about who held the microphone. It was about control, about recognition, about relevance. The mic became a symbol, a talisman of authority, and Harry's refusal to relinquish it was emblematic of something much deeper than a single stage incident. It was a boundary, a claim to agency, a visual assertion that he would not be complicit in moments orchestrated for her benefit at the expense of authenticity. Every subsequent event carried echoes of that moment. The gestures, the glances, the calculated smiles, the tense silences. They all built on the foundation laid in that brief, awkward pause on stage. And Meghan, despite her carefully curated image, could not hide the tension that radiated from her, the subtle frustration that leaked through in ways both conscious and unconscious. Her performances, once seamless, now carried an undercurrent of desperation, a tension that those paying attention could not miss. The audience didn't need to hear words. The visuals, the micro-expressions, the silent choreography of discomfort said everything. It's the quiet moments that tell the truth. When cameras are rolling, smiles are in place and speeches continue, the subtleties of body language, the hesitations, the prolonged glances, these are where the narrative lies. Meghan's attempts to dominate, to assert herself, to reclaim a spotlight increasingly slipping from her grasp, clashed with Harry's quiet but firm resistance. Each event became a replay, a mirror of that original stage moment, reinforcing the tension, amplifying the drama, leaving the audience with an unspoken understanding that all was not as it seemed. And so the story unfolds, not in grand gestures or public statements, but in these tiny, telling moments. A hand not offered, a mic held too tightly, a glance too long, a smile too forced. These are the building blocks of the drama, the subtle signs of a marriage under strain, played out in real time for an audience all too eager to interpret without context. The tension between authenticity and performance, between desire for attention and refusal to grant it, creates a narrative more compelling than any headline or official statement. Every subsequent public appearance carries the weight of these unspoken conflicts. The stage becomes a battlefield, the microphone a weapon, the smiles masks concealing the strain beneath. Meghan's persistence meets Harry's quiet resistance in a performance that is both public and deeply personal. A struggle for space, recognition, and respect that plays out in flashes captured by cameras but ignored by most commentators. The tension is cinematic, palpable, almost unbearable in its subtle intensity, and yet it continues, repeated in variations, each new moment layered with the history of the last, each smile and pause charged with meaning. And in this unfolding drama, the world watches, largely unaware of the micro-narratives at play, distracted by the spectacle, yet drawn inexorably to the silent battles, the awkward pauses, the small telling gestures. The story is written not in words, not in press releases, but in the body language, in the silence, in the refusal to yield the microphone, in the awkward lingering of a smile that hides a storm beneath. It is here, in these unspoken moments, that the truth resides, the raw, unfiltered tension of a marriage performed for an audience, a battle for control played out in the harsh light of public scrutiny. And as this continues, the narrative builds. Each new stage, each new mic, each new forced smile adds layers to the story, revealing more about the imbalance, the struggle for relevance, the tension between two people caught in a web of public expectation and personal desire. The drama is in the repetition, the micro-conflicts, the relentless collision of ambition and restraint, of performance and reality. And the audience, though often oblivious, cannot help but sense it, cannot help but feel the electric tension that radiates from these carefully orchestrated yet quietly chaotic moments. The mic becomes a symbol of all of it: control, boundaries, recognition, authority, resistance, frustration, desire, and tension. Harry's refusal to release it, Meghan's insistence on claiming it, the awkward silences, the forced smiles, they are all part of a story that is unfolding live, unedited, raw, and cinematic. It is the drama of marriage on display, a collision of personalities and ambitions, a dance of power and vulnerability, a story told in the smallest gestures, the briefest pauses, the tiniest inflections. And as each scene plays out, the narrative deepens, suspense grows, and the world watches, unaware of just how much is being said in the silence. Every public event becomes a stage for this ongoing struggle. Every smile, every glance, every hesitant gesture is a chapter in the unfolding drama. The mic remains a silent witness, a constant presence, a reminder of boundaries drawn and challenged. Harry's posture, his control, his quiet assertion of agency contrasts with Meghan's persistence, her attempts to dominate, her carefully constructed smiles that hide an undercurrent of frustration. The tension is visible, palpable, undeniable, and yet the world continues to consume the spectacle, unaware that the real story is happening in these small, charged moments of silence and subtle defiance. And so it continues, a narrative of marriage, public image, and unspoken tension, told through the smallest of actions, the most fleeting gestures, the quiet insistence of a man refusing to relinquish control, and a woman determined to assert her presence. It is cinematic, it is dramatic, it is quietly devastating, and it is utterly compelling. The audience may not understand it consciously, may not see the cracks behind the smiles, may not grasp the tension behind the polished appearances, but it is there, undeniable, persistent, and increasingly impossible to ignore. The world may move on, but the mic tells the story. The stage captures the tension. The silence screams the truth. And through it all, the marriage, the public image, the unspoken battle for space, recognition, and relevance unfolds. Moment by moment, gesture by gesture, pause by pause, creating a narrative more gripping than any scripted drama, more revealing than any headline, and more compelling than any performance ever intended. It is the story of two people, caught in the relentless glare of public attention, navigating a private struggle on a public stage, and it is impossible to look away. Impossible to look away. And worse, it's a performance that nobody's buying. Even her wardrobe, once praised as flawlessly royal, now betrays the tension she carries with her into every room. Mismatched, wrinkled, slightly askew, every fold and crease tells a story of a woman fighting just to be seen, fighting to hold on to relevance, fighting to maintain a grip on a narrative that is slipping through her fingers. Where once she commanded attention effortlessly, now she struggles to own the frame, as if the frame itself resists her. And when the cameras catch that desperate smile, it is no longer the charm that drew headlines and admiration. It is survival. Every flash, every click of the shutter, every lens pointed in her direction becomes an interrogation, exposing fissures that were once carefully concealed. Behind the polished exterior, behind the glossy veneer of Hollywood glamour and Duchess poise, there is tension, raw and palpable, and insiders have started to notice. They whisper quietly at first, then with a growing audacity, hinting that Meghan's days of spinning reality to suit her narrative might finally be over. And then there is Harry. Poor Harry. This is not the same man the world once knew. The cheeky prince, the playful rebel with a sparkle in his eye and a grin that could melt hearts, the one who stole every scene with natural ease, seems like a distant memory. That man is gone. What remains is a man burdened, a man exhausted, a man carefully measuring every gesture, every word, every glance. The charm, the warmth, the off-the-cuff honesty, all of it has been tempered by years of navigating a narrative he no longer fully believes. He speaks, but his sentences are cautious, rehearsed in 1,000 invisible mirrors. Every joke falls flat. Every gesture feels calculated. Every smile, though present, doesn't quite reach the corners of his eyes. He is half in, half out, not just of the royal family, but of himself, as though California, meant to be a refuge, has become a gilded cage. He carries with him the weight of Meghan's ambitions, the suffocating pressure of public scrutiny, and the relentless, unspoken expectations of a royal family that moves forward without him. Each public appearance becomes a tightrope act. Every stage, every microphone, every interaction with cameras and crowds is another test of control, another attempt to assert presence while navigating invisible boundaries. Meghan steps forward, always eager, always poised to seize attention, and Harry's subtle resistance, his control of space, the way he grips the mic, the tension in his stance, speaks volumes. The audience may not consciously notice, but the energy is undeniable. It crackles in the air, it pulses in every click of a shutter, every beam of light from a camera, and it tells a story of a relationship strained to the point of fragility. The quiet moments are the most telling. A hand not offered, a glance too brief, a pause too long. These micro-conflicts accumulate, each one layering tension upon tension, creating a suspense that is impossible to ignore. Meghan's attempts to dominate the stage, to command attention, to be the center of every frame, are met with Harry's subtle defiance. It is a silent battle, fought without words but visible to anyone paying close attention. He doesn't need to confront her openly. His posture, his refusal to hand over the microphone, the controlled way he continues his speeches, are enough to assert boundaries. And she, for all her energy and determination, can feel it. She reaches, she smiles. She tries to draw him into her orbit, but the energy refuses her. Every uninvited intrusion, every desperate attempt to reclaim space only amplifies the tension, leaving her frustrated and exposed in a way the cameras capture with brutal clarity. Every public event carries echoes of previous confrontations. The gestures, the pauses, the subtle shifts in weight, the half-smiles, the way Harry slightly turns away. They are all part of a pattern that the world is slowly beginning to register. And yet, the spectacle continues. Meghan steps forward as if rehearsed to perfection, expecting recognition and applause, and instead finds hesitation, awkward silence, the faint rustle of confusion in the crowd. The contrast between expectation and reality is stark, almost unbearable in its clarity. And when she finally withdraws, it is not simply an exit. It is a message, a quiet but unmistakable declaration of frustration, a silent tantrum performed in the shadows of her own public persona. The pattern repeats, each instance more telling than the last. Stage after stage, mic after mic, smile after smile, the tension between performance and reality grows more pronounced. Harry's subtle resistance, his quiet assertion of agency, contrasts sharply with Meghan's persistent attempts to dominate and control the optics. And in these repeated micro-battles, the cracks in their public image widen. Where once the world admired seamless unity, now hesitation, awkwardness, and tension become the prevailing narrative. The cameras capture the gestures, the pauses, the tiny signs of exasperation and fatigue, and the audience feels the drama even if they cannot articulate it. California has not freed Harry. It has, in many ways, placed him in a different form of confinement. He is quieter, more hesitant, more measured, carrying the burden of not just his own choices but the consequences of Meghan's relentless push for relevance. Every event, every public appearance, every photo opportunity becomes a battlefield of subtle power plays. Meghan steps forward, eager to seize attention, to reclaim control, to assert herself. Harry responds, not with confrontation, but with quiet, deliberate resistance. A hand that doesn't extend, a microphone that remains firmly in place, a smile that doesn't fully engage. And the tension is undeniable, palpable, almost cinematic in its intensity. The world may focus on the spectacle, the headlines, the celebrity gossip, but the real story lies in the details, in the micro-conflicts, in the silent negotiation of space, relevance, and recognition. Meghan's attempts to dominate are increasingly transparent, her gestures carrying desperation beneath the polished exterior. Harry's calm endurance, his refusal to be drawn into a performance he has not agreed to, speaks volumes about exhaustion, resilience, and the limits of patience. The dynamic between them is no longer a charming story of rebellion and romance. It is a high-stakes drama played out in the smallest of movements, each gesture loaded with meaning, each pause pregnant with suspense. Every uninvited step onto a stage, every forced smile, every attempt to claim the microphone adds layers to the tension. The audience may not consciously grasp the nuances, but the energy is there, impossible to ignore. It hums through the room, lingers in the photographs, flickers across television screens. It is visible in Harry's controlled movements, his subtle resistance, the weight of the microphone in his hand, and in Meghan's persistent but increasingly transparent attempts to assert herself. The story is told not in words, not in press statements, but in these small, telling moments, in the silent clash of ambition and restraint, desire and boundaries. Each appearance, each flash of the camera, each stage moment becomes a replay of the same tension, a reflection of the growing chasm between them. Meghan's charm, once effortless and magnetic, begins to falter under the scrutiny of repeated exposure. Harry's defiance, once a subtle expression of individuality, softens into hesitation, a quiet negotiation with exhaustion and reality. The world gradually begins to notice. The suspense builds not through scandal or outrage, but through the subtle, relentless display of strain, fatigue, and unspoken conflict. The tension is cinematic, intense, almost unbearable in its quiet insistence. And yet, despite the cracks, the drama continues. Meghan pushes forward, trying to reclaim what she feels slipping away, while Harry maintains a quiet, deliberate control, refusing to participate in performances he has not consented to. Every glance, every pause, every gesture is loaded with meaning. The stage, the mic, the cameras, they all become instruments in a performance that is not about glamour or charm, but about survival, boundaries, and control. The public sees a polished image, but the cracks are visible to those paying attention, the tension almost tangible in its persistence. The story unfolds in repetition. The uninvited intrusion, the awkward silence, the forced smile, the subtle defiance. Each moment builds upon the last, layers of suspense accumulating, tension ratcheting higher with every micro-conflict. Harry's exhaustion is palpable, Meghan's desperation increasingly obvious, and the cameras capture every detail with ruthless clarity. The narrative is cinematic, dramatic, and unrelenting. A high-stakes performance played out in public, exposing the fragility beneath the veneer of elegance and charm. As the tension grows, the audience begins to sense the story behind the performance. The details are subtle but telling. A glance that lingers too long, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a gesture of defiance, a subtle assertion of boundaries. These are the real moments, the ones that reveal the strain, the fatigue, the quiet desperation beneath the public image. Meghan's attempts to dominate are met with quiet resistance, a battle for space, relevance, and recognition played out in micro-conflicts that accumulate into a suspenseful, gripping narrative. And slowly, inexorably, the story reaches its crescendo. The pattern of performance, resistance, and tension repeats with each public appearance, each stage moment, each forced smile. The audience may not consciously understand it, but the energy, the suspense, the palpable strain are impossible to ignore. Meghan's charm begins to fade under the relentless pressure of scrutiny. Harry's defiance softens into caution, his patience wearing thin. The public begins to notice, the drama becoming more compelling with every unspoken conflict, every silent assertion of control, every subtle gesture loaded with meaning. California may have promised freedom, but it has brought only a different kind of confinement. Harry is trapped, not by obligation or tradition, but by the persistent demands of public performance, by the tension of a marriage played out in micro-conflicts for the world to observe. Meghan is fighting to reclaim attention, relevance, and control, but her charm is waning under the scrutiny of repeated exposure. The narrative unfolds quietly, inexorably, a suspenseful drama told in gestures, pauses, and subtle clashes that reveal the strain beneath the polished exterior. And so the pattern continues. Stage by stage, mic by mic, smile by smile. The tension builds, the suspense grows, the cracks become more visible, and the audience becomes increasingly aware of the subtle, cinematic drama playing out before them. The marriage, the public image, the silent battle for space and recognition. It is all there, unfolding moment by moment, gesture by gesture, pause by pause, in a narrative more compelling than any headline, more revealing than any public statement, and more dramatic than any staged photograph. The world watches, unaware of the subtle intricacies, the micro-conflicts, the silent negotiations playing out on each stage, behind every microphone, beneath every smile. The story is told in pauses, gestures, and the relentless clash of ambition and restraint. Meghan's persistence meets Harry's quiet defiance in a drama that is both public and deeply personal, cinematic in its tension, gripping in its subtlety, and impossible to look away from. This is Crown and Controversy, unraveling the royals, one scandal at a time. Don't forget to subscribe.